Hey there, it's your boy Foxy, back for more relationship stories. Update: cheat on me with my best friend. I'll wreck your career and publicly humiliate both of you. Original post. S-Head and Sarah have been like family to my wife and I for several years, practically ever since we moved in across the street from them. The four of us were extremely tight. Our kids are the same age as theirs and are all good friends. We were one big family unit. We did dinner together a few times a week. We went on vacations together. I truly saw S-Head as a brother, and my wife and Sarah were very close too. 5 months ago, I was completely blindsided by the discovery of an affair between my wife and S-Head. My wife had left her email open on our computer, and I saw an email from her to her longtime therapist saying that S-Head would be joining her at an upcoming session again. Oh, what the heck? My mind started racing. Why in the world would S-Head be going to her therapy sessions without my knowledge? So I did a search and found some other emails to and from the therapist, proving that S-Head had been going to sessions together with her for about 6 weeks. I checked our mobile phone account and discovered that since late summer, they had been exchanging hundreds of texts every day, peaking at nearly 500 a day by the holidays. Speaking of the holidays, my wife and I hosted both of our families, parents, siblings, etc., for both Thanksgiving and Christmas dinner, and S-Head and Sarah joined us, either for dinner or after dinner on both holidays. Text records showed that the entire time that they were at our house celebrating with our families, my wife and S-Head were texting each other across the room. They were doing that pretty much every time the four of us hung out. For months. And, all day every day just in general. But what bothers me the most is that they were doing it with Sarah and I right there. I confronted my wife with the evidence, and she admitted that yes, she and S-Head had fallen in love. It just happened. I don't know how, but I love him and I just don't feel anything for you anymore. I'm sorry. They had gone on a school district trip together. Something had happened in her hotel room, and things had moved quickly from there. She explained, as I lay face down on the couch, unable to look at her, that they had already made plans to move out and divorce me and Sarah. And while they didn't plan to move in together immediately because of the kids, they'd probably do so eventually. The meetings with the therapist were supposedly mostly for the purpose of finding a way to break this to me and Sarah as gently as possible, because they were so very concerned for our well-being. Sarah and I are fairly certain that they weren't planning on telling us about the affair at all, and were simply going to discover their feelings for one another several months down the line, after they'd come up with some other reason to divorce the two of us. My wife moved out 2 months ago. I was, and still am, utterly destroyed. I cry every day. I cried writing the first few paragraphs of this story just now. I worry nonstop about the impact on our kids. But I am also not exactly a shrinking violet when I feel that I've been wronged. And in this case, I was, objectively, very, very wronged. So, a couple of years ago, S-Head ran for a Board of Education seat as a pretty extreme underdog. I helped him with his campaign materials and debate prep. And my wife, a well-known school district employee, this becomes important later, got the word out as best she could. Much to our surprise, he actually won in a squeaker by just a few dozen votes. Being on the board became the center of S-Head's world. He joined every committee that he could. This turned into the foundation of his affair with my wife, as they were constantly going to school events and meetings together on evenings and weekends. Once I discovered the affair, my thoughts turned pretty quickly to revenge, and it occurred to me that an extramarital affair between a member of the Board of Education and an employee of the school district was at least bad politics and possibly violated district policy. Making things far worse for them was that my wife was in the running for an open administrative position, and everyone knew that she was more or less guaranteed the job and the major pay raise that came with it. She had just finished her master's degree in school administration at the urging of her principal and the superintendent so that she could be promoted to this specific position. I had plenty of evidence of the affair, texts from both of them admitting to it, text records showing that they were texting hundreds of times a day, emails to and from the therapist, and so on. I considered simply emailing all of the evidence to the board and the superintendent, but felt like I, as the grieving betrayed spouse, might not be seen as a credible source. So instead, I invented a fictitious furious friend who was planning on showing up to the next board meeting and publicly shaming the two of them for their affair. I told my wife that I'd tried to talk this person down, but couldn't guarantee that they wouldn't show up and humiliate them publicly. As I expected, this led S-Head to conclude that the only option was for him to preemptively admit the affair to the board. The superintendent subsequently recommended that S-Head resign, which he did. Sarah said that he was utterly humiliated and crushed, and barely got out of bed for a few days afterward. Once word of the affair and S-Head's resignation started getting around, the superintendent, a longtime friend of both my wife and S-Head, contacted my wife and tearfully informed her that it was no longer politically appropriate for her to be promoted to an administrative position within the district. The position that had been lined up for her was later filled by an outside candidate. This sent waves of confusion and rumor throughout the district, as it was pretty well known that my wife was getting the job. The day after she was informed that she wasn't getting the promotion, my wife and I, despite our crumbling marriage, took our son out to breakfast together on his birthday, and a parent stopped by our table to congratulate her on her new role. She said thanks, then excused herself to go cry in the bathroom for a while. I let the dust settle for a couple of weeks, and then right before my wife moved out, let them in on my little secret. There was never a furious friend threatening to expose them in the first place, just me. Word of all of this has gotten around our fairly small town, which S-Head grew up in and my wife has worked in for nearly 20 years. My wife refuses to talk to me about how things are at work now, but I've heard from some people I know in the district that her formerly spotless reputation has taken a major hit. S-Head, formerly a gregarious social presence in our neighborhood and at events in pubs in town, has completely gone underground and barely emerges to mow his lawn. He's moving out soon to a crappy little townhouse, which is all he can afford due to all the child support he's going to have to pay his wife. My wife and S-Head claim that they plan on trying to make things work together, despite all the public humiliation. I wish them lots of luck with that. I'm sure it will be a lot of fun to show their faces together in town. Edit. Are you and Sarah a thing now? You should totally be a thing, that would be awesome. No. We're friends. We've been incredibly important to each other since this all started and have certainly gotten a lot closer, but not in the way everyone's thinking. This would all be so much harder to deal with if I didn't have her to lean on, and she says she feels the same way about me. We're going through basically the exact same situation with the same players after all. S-Head hasn't moved out yet. Once he does, we plan to go back to getting the kids together more often like they used to. It'll never be the same, of course. She already does come over with the kids from time to time, but it's just tough with S-Head's constant presence across the street. Didn't your revenge hurt both sets of kids? Not really. S-Head has a day job. The Board of Education was his hobby and his passion, but this didn't affect his income at all. And my wife has been assured that if she wants to pursue an administrative position with another district, she'll have glowing letters of recommendation from her superintendent and principal. It'll mean giving up a lot of work relationships in the process, but given the hit her reputation has taken, I'm guessing she makes that jump sooner rather than later. In the meantime, not moving to an administrative job means that she still has summers off with the kids. Why do you call her your wife instead of your former wife? We're working our way through divorce mediation, but it isn't final yet. We'll be soon. Why didn't you notice all of the texting your wife was doing? Well, I did. It was really starting to piss me off. It was excessive. She has a big social circle and does tend to text a lot anyway, but it was really getting over the top, to the point where she was completely ignoring me and the kids. At one point in November, I asked her to agree to a no phones at the dinner table rule, which she agreed to reluctantly, but then would pout through dinner, and eventually she just started using her phone during dinner again. All that said, I was blind. Not only was the texting getting weird, but her relationship with S-Head was starting to make me uncomfortable. Sarah noticed it too and agreed. We confronted them a couple of times about it directly, and they both swore up and down that it was just school stuff that they were talking about. There was nothing else going on. And for whatever reason, we believed them, probably because the mind tends to refuse to see things that it doesn't want to see. Thanks, by the way, for all of the support in the comments. I couldn't reply to everyone, but I did read them all, and I appreciate them, even the brutally honest feedback from people who feel that I did the wrong thing. Posting this and reading all of the responses introduced me to perspectives I hadn't considered about all of this, and reminded me most of all that the anguish I'm dealing with is pretty normal given the situation I'm going through. I had a pretty okay Memorial Day weekend, even though I missed my wife and thought a lot about the things we'd probably be doing as a family. I'm taking my kids camping next weekend, and having something like that to look forward to and plan has me feeling pretty good today. Now for top comments before reading the update 3 years later. Something had happened in her hotel room. Well, that's one way to put it. They refused to tell us what exactly happened, which tells us all we need to know. Even our child psychologist rolled his eyes at that part of the story. Could have been an accident. Maybe your wife was innocently lying on her back to put her pants on while S-Head was in the bathroom peeing, and then he stepped on a skateboard, rode it into the sleeping area, and fell right on top of her. Happens all the time. I love you. It's been more than a year since my husband divorced me for someone else. I still cry every day. I will never see justice of any kind for the years I lost loving him. I love you for getting your revenge. Faithless people suck, and they deserve everything they get. I know exactly how you feel, and I'm so sorry for what you're going through. I hope it gets better someday. I still have no idea whether it will. Getting them to press a self-destruct button, outstanding move. Minimum effort, maximum destruction, and didn't even have to get his hands dirty. I respect that. I dig it. It's still a pretty sad story. A great life for all four of them dissolves because two people make the selfish decision to focus on their own happiness rather than the other person's. I sorta dig it, and mostly I'm just bummed. The real tragedy is the impact something like this has on the kids. Sad internet strangers care more about the kids' well-being more than the cheaters do. And now for the update. I've been getting a surprising number of requests to post an update to this story. I guess it blew up a bit on TikTok, which I don't use. Where to start? It's been a bizarre few years, especially with COVID thrown in the mix, which I somehow still have never caught, despite my kids getting it twice each, thankfully just mild cases. Well, at the time that I posted the original story, I was obviously a wreck. Things actually got significantly darker for a while after that. My ex decided to start bringing S-head around our kids just a few months after she moved out, which was really hard for me to deal with. I'd never really dealt with serious depression before, but things got bad enough that my doctor more or less forced me to start on an antidepressant because I admitted to him that I was thinking about self-harm pretty frequently. I think this is where I should mention trigger warning for the rest of this paragraph. I had a very specific plan and everything I needed to do it. The one thing that gave me any kind of relief was telling myself that if life got any more unbearable, I had a way out. So yeah, things got bad. But I'm still here, and thankfully I don't think about that option anymore. I reluctantly decided to dip my toe into the online dating world, and after a number of short-term things that didn't pan out, I actually connected with someone, much to my surprise. We'll have been together for 2 years next month. She's absolutely amazing. We don't live together, and for the time being, we're both good with seeing each other a few times a week. Would I love to see her more? Yep. Am I ready to live with someone again and go all Brady Bunch with our respective kids? I'm not sure. For the time being, we have a lot of fun together, and that's more than good enough for me. As far as things stand with my ex and S-head, they're still together, but there seems to be trouble in paradise because my kids report that they almost never see him anymore. My kids don't like him at all, and they just avoid him when he's around, according to my older one. When all of this started, she had seemed confident that they'd be living together pretty soon, but they still don't, and as far as I know, there are no plans in the works for that. They did buy a boat together, which I find hilarious for some reason. It just seems like the classic affair couple thing to do. Sarah took a long time to accept that her marriage was truly over. But once she did, she really did an admirable job of moving on. She engrossed herself in home improvement projects, she remains the same incredible mom that she's always been, and she's been in a friends with benefits type relationship, which is all she wants right now, with a nice funny guy for almost 2 years. We hang out here and there, especially when my pool is open in the summer. We aren't nearly as dependent on each other as we were in the beginning, but we're still close friends. And no, still nothing more than that, which I'm glad about, because the one thing this situation definitely never needed was more drama. My ex left the school district she was working for and took a job in a neighboring district. I have no idea what S-head is up to, nor do I care. I hardly ever see him except at the occasional school event. For a while there, I was worried that he'd look at me the wrong way, and I'd wind up in jail for knocking him out in an elementary school cafeteria, or something, but I just don't care enough about him anymore for that to be a concern. So all in all, life is pretty okay right now. I do miss being a family. I still have nightmares about all of this stuff and deal with intrusive thoughts at times. I fall asleep to audiobooks now to keep those thoughts at bay, otherwise, I still struggle to sleep sometimes. But my girlfriend is amazing. I have an incredibly supportive family. I just officiated my sister's wedding a couple of months ago, and I have a big dog who needs lots of walks, and that's a huge help for me on so many levels. I hope that update answered people's questions. Thanks again for all of the support. Taking your affair partner to therapy is wild. Imagine doing that 6 consecutive times, and then accidentally leaving an email mentioning it open and saying you were trying to work out a way to tell OP. Oh. Pro revenge, but rookie move admitting that he was the furious friend. I think it's hilarious that his ex and S-head don't live together. Someone realized really fast that their relationship isn't as fun and spicy when it's out in the open lol. Yeah, he should have kept the friend thing a secret. The uncertainty about who had screwed them over would have added to the hit they were taking. What garbage people they are. The tidbit about them buying a boat together of all things tickled me. A boat. Seems like such a random purpose for a couple that doesn't even live together to make. But I did love the revenge itself. OP barely had to lift a finger. All it took was playing dumb and pulling a classic my friend move. I'm weirdly pleased that it's been literal years, and they haven't even gotten their act together to, well, live together lol. Tidbit about them buying a boat together, of all things, tickled me. The kind of smart financial planning you'd expect from adulterers. I read that, and thought of my father who bought a boat with the chick he basically trauma bonded to after our mother's death. He deeply regrets that decision. He loves the boat, but there is no freaking way that thing is going to be able to be shared between them. I can say for sure that I did not expect an update to this story at all. And really, it's the kind of update you'd expect. Broken things remain broken, affair partners who like each other still like each other, emotions are recovering because time heals an awful lot. But it was nice to see it spelled out. And it was a mild surprise that the affair partners stayed together.